What is up, everybody? I wanted to come to you guys with my Impact Wrestling review from last night's Impact Wrestling show. So let's jump right into this review and talk about what happened last night on Impact Wrestling. To start off the show, we have Moose versus one of my favorites, Willie Mack. Willie Mack has always been one of my favorites from Lucha Underground. Willie Mack was a favorite of mine from Lucha Underground. But now that he's in Impact Wrestling, I don't really have an interest in Mack all that much anymore. Mack was one of my favorite wrestlers on Lucha Underground. Mack was awesome to me. I like when Mack would hit his stunner out. It was really cool. But we have we have Willie Mack versus Moose to start off Impact Wrestling. This match didn't do anything for me. This was too slow for me to get into. These two men just they put on a very slow, methodical match. This match didn't do much for me. I didn't really care too much for this match with Willie Mack versus Moose. I didn't really care for it all that much. It didn't really do anything for me. I was a big fan of Moose on Lucha Underground, but now that Mack is in Impact Wrestling, Willie Mack just doesn't get. I don't really pop for him like I used to. I mean, I used to pop for Mack when he was in Lucha Underground, man. Mack was a beast in Lucha Underground. Now Willie Mack is just he's just okay. I mean, Willie Mack isn't that wrestler anymore that I used to be like. Mack is the dude that can go out there and put on a great match. I mean, him and Moose didn't match well together. Him and Moose don't have any chemistry in the ring. Their ring chemistry is just off. I don't know what it is. These two guys cannot put on a match together. These two guys just absolutely suck in the ring. I don't know what it is. I don't know why that is, but Willie Mack versus Moose last night on Impact Wrestling to start off the show just absolutely bogged down. The match was slow, very methodical. This match didn't do anything for me. I didn't really care for it. These two men just their in-ring chemistry is just off. I don't know what it is. I don't know why that is. And Moose ended up knocking out Willie Mack last night on Impact Wrestling by hitting Willie Mack with a bunch of forearms. So Moose got the knockout. Moose knocked out Willie Mack last night on Impact Wrestling. Moose ends up burying Willie Mack. Willie Mack is buried on Impact Wrestling. That's just the way I see it. Mack is just completely buried on Impact Wrestling. I don't know what they're doing with him. Mack is completely buried. And then we had Suicide versus. Then we go into the next match which is Suicide versus Geo. This match didn't last but like 30 seconds at the most. This match didn't last that long. We had an interference from some dude. He came in and attacked Geo, and then he attacked Suicide. So this match didn't last but like a couple seconds at the most. And Geo ended up picking up the win over Suicide from outside ring interference from this dude. I don't know what his name is, but some dude came down and interfered in this match with Geo and Suicide in their match last night on Impact Wrestling. Geo picked up the disqualification win over Suicide on Impact Wrestling. And then we had the knockout women's tag team tournament last night on Impact Wrestling with Alicia Edwards and Tennille Dashwood versus Nevaeh and Havoc, and then knockout women's tag tournament last night on Impact Wrestling. This was a decent women's tag match with Alicia Edwards and Tennille Dashwood versus Nevaeh and Havoc. This was an alright women's tag team match. I didn't really look that much into it. It was alright for what it was to be a women's tag team tournament match. It was alright. It really didn't do anything for me. It was an alright match for what it was. I enjoyed the match for what it was. I didn't read too much into it, but it was an alright women's tag team tournament match to be on last night's Impact Wrestling show. This match, this knockout women's tag team tournament match was all right. I enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't really get excited for it. I don't care about Havoc. I don't care about Nevaeh. Tenille Dashwood is awesome. Tenille Dashwood is awesome. I'm not a big fan of Alicia Edwards, but I mean, this women's tag tournament match last night on Impact Wrestling was all right. I thought it was a decent women's tournament match for the for the knockout women's tag tournament last night for Impact Wrestling. And Nevaeh and Havoc ended up picking up the win over Alicia Edwards and Tenille Dashwood to advance in the knockout women's tag tournament last night on Impact Wrestling. And then we had Brian Myers versus Crazy Steve. I don't really care. I don't care about Brian Myers. I was a fan of Crazy Steve in the Final Deletion. I was a fan of Crazy Steve when he was in the Final Deletion with Matt and Jeff. I really liked when Crazy Steve was a part of what was it called? I can't remember the name. I can't remember the tag team's name that was in that deletion with Matt and Jeff Hardy. I can't remember. I can't remember their name, but I was a fan of Crazy Steve when he was in the deletion with Matt and Jeff Hardy. I'm not crazy about Crazy Steve. Crazy Steve he's all right. I mean, Brian Myers is I don't care. I don't really care about these two. This match wasn't all that great. This match was just decent enough to be an okay match between Crazy Steve and Brian Myers last night on Impact Wrestling. I didn't really care for this match all that much. I thought it was just okay. Brian Myers and Crazy Steve, these two men are just blah. I didn't really care for the match, and Brian Myers ended up picking up the win over Crazy Steve. So let's get into the main event of Impact Wrestling. We had the Rascals, we had Trey Miguel and Rich Swann versus Dez and Wentz of the Rascals for their final farewell last night on Impact Wrestling. So this was the main event of Impact Wrestling last night. We were saying goodbye to the Rascals. They're heading to the WWE. I wish them all the best. I hope the Rascals find success in the WWE. And this was a pretty damn good, decent main event with Trey Miguel and Rich Swann versus Dez and Wentz in the main event last night of Impact Wrestling in the final farewell of the Rascals. This was a pretty damn good, decent main event. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a pretty damn good, decent main event to be in the main event of Impact Wrestling last night. Like I said, for the final farewell of the Rascals with Trey Miguel and Rich Swann versus Dez and Wentz. This was the final farewell to the Rascals last night on Impact Wrestling. They are now heading to WWE, which I hope they find success in WWE. I wish the Rascals all the success in the world. And so this was a pretty damn good, decent main event last night in the main event of Impact Wrestling with Rich Swann and Trey Miguel versus Dez and Wentz of the Rascals. This was a really, really decent, damn good main event last night on Impact Wrestling for the main event and the final farewell of the Rascals. This was a decent, damn good main event. I thought it was pretty decent to be a main event. I liked it for what it was. It was a decent, damn good main event. I thought it was pretty damn good. I admit I thought it was pretty damn decent. So it was a damn good, decent main event for Impact Wrestling last night in the final farewell of the Rascals. And Rich Swann and Trey Miguel ended up picking up the win over Dez and Wentz of the Rascals last night in the final farewell of the Rascals last night on Impact Wrestling. This was a pretty good, damn good main event last night on Impact Wrestling with Rich Swann and Trey Miguel versus Dez and Wentz of the Rascals. This was a pretty damn good, decent main event. I liked it for what it was. It was enjoyable for what it was. I liked it. I thought it was a pretty good, damn decent main event. And Rich Swann and Trey Miguel picked up the win over Dez and Wentz of the Rascals. And when the Rascals had their farewell match last night on Impact Wrestling, all the men hugged in the center of the ring. It was an emotional moment with the Rascals and Rich Swann. It was a really emotional it was an emotional end to the match with the Rascals and Rich Swann. It was an emotional main event. All the men stood up and hugged each other and had tears in their eyes. And then as Impact Wrestling is just about to go off the air, the Rascals hand their jackets to each other and they hang their jackets over the other side of the ring, on the other side of the ring, like not the front part of the ring but the back side of the ring. The Rascals hung their jackets on the back side of the ring for their farewell match last night on Impact Wrestling. So last night was the final farewell of the Rascals last night on Impact Wrestling. And I will say this, man, I hope the Rascals find success in the WWE. I hope they find success. I hope they hit it big time in WWE. I can't wait to see them debut on NXT. I can't wait to see where they go on NXT. I can't wait to see how they debut on NXT. I don't know if they're gonna still go by the Rascals or another name. We'll see what happens with that when they enter NXT. I don't know if they are still gonna go by the Rascals or if WWE is going to change the name. I don't know. We'll see about that when it happens. But this was the final farewell for the Rascals last night on Impact Wrestling. Like I said, Trey Miguel and Rich Swann ended up defeating Dez and Wentz in the final farewell of Impact. Trey Miguel and Rich Swann ended up defeating Dez and Wentz in the final farewell for the Rascals last night on Impact Wrestling. So the best thing last night about Impact Wrestling, the Deonna Purrazzo segment was good. Deonna Purrazzo's been hitting home runs in her backstage segments on Impact Wrestling. Deonna Purrazzo had another awesome backstage segment last night on Impact Wrestling. Another home run segment by the virtuosa Deonna Purrazzo. Her backstage segment last night on Impact Wrestling was really, really good. Other than that, outside of this show, nothing much really happened. This show was based on the final farewell to the Rascals last night on Impact Wrestling. This show was based around the Rascals and their final farewell. So outside of that, nothing much really happened on Impact Wrestling last night. The best thing about Impact Wrestling last night was the backstage segment by the virtuosa Deonna. The best thing about Impact Wrestling last night was the backstage segment last night with Deonna Purrazzo, the virtuosa. So other than that, this show wasn't really all that great. Like I said, the Impact Wrestling last night was based around the final farewell of the Rascals. So anyway, guys, if you guys like this Impact Wrestling review, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. It helps my YouTube channel and the YouTube algorithm. And guys, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell and become part of the notification gang here on the channel. And thank you guys for watching this Impact Wrestling review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed this Impact Wrestling review as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you guys. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Overall, Impact Wrestling gets a 1 out of 10 from me. The best thing about Impact Wrestling last night was the backstage segment with Deonna Purrazzo. That was the best thing about Impact Wrestling last night. So overall, Impact Wrestling for me gets a 1 out of 10. So thank you guys for watching this Impact Wrestling review. I will see you guys back here tonight for the NXT and AEW review. And until then, you guys have a awesome Wednesday. Much love from me to you guys. You guys have a kick-ass day. Your boy is out, man. Much love. I am out. Deuces.